Supreme Court case. Former Vice President Mike Pence weighs in on tomorrow's pro-life hearing. Comprehensive coverage. The head of the Susan B. Anthony list explains how this could reshape abortion laws across the country. Bill signing. President Joe Biden approves the country's newest laws. And coronavirus crisis, where vaccine mandates are being implemented overseas. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the Feast of St. Andrew the Apostle. I'm Tracy Sable. As the Supreme Court prepares to hear oral arguments tomorrow on the Mississippi abortion law case, a former vice president is urging the justices to fight for the unborn. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Throughout his political career, Mike Pence has been a vocal supporter for human life, a mission he continues today. Worried about the concerns of the unborn after the legalization of abortion in 1973.
Unborn children have been relegated into a caste of second-class citizens, devoid of the most basic human rights. Precious babies have lived outside the protection of the law and at the mercy of a culture that devalues them.
In July, Mike Pence announced his organization, Advancing American Freedom, filed an amicus brief urging the justices to uphold the Mississippi law and overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision that legalized abortion in the U.S. He says it's a matter of dignity.
The court's misguided decision in Roe v. Wade has inflicted a tragedy not only on our nation but on humanity that's hard to fathom. Its scale is unprecedented in the history of mankind.
The event today in the nation's capital was sponsored by the pro-life organization Susan B. Anthony List. A number of pro-abortion groups have announced that they will make abortion a campaign issue next fall. NARAL Pro-Choice America says it's backing a dozen House pro-abortion Democrats. Ahead of the 2022 midterm elections, the former vice president says congressional Democrats have it wrong.
I have no doubt that a significant number of Democrat voters in America believe in the sanctity of life. No doubt whatsoever. But the reality is that their office holders today support abortion on demand.
He asked Americans to pray for the justices.
Join us. So we humbly ask our new conservative majority on the Supreme Court of the United States, overturn Roe v. Wade and give America a new beginning for life.
The justices will hear the Mississippi abortion case tomorrow. We'll stay on top of the latest developments. Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining me now is Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the pro-life organization, the Susan B. Anthony List. Marjorie, great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, such a pleasure, always.
Oh, we love having you on. And as we heard, Eric said that your organization did sponsor the event that Vice President Pence was speaking at. We saw you there on that video. Tell us a little bit more about that, and also why former Vice President Mike Pence is really a wonderful voice for the pro-life movement.
Well, it's really important in this particular moment, moving into the Dobbs oral arguments, which will culminate in June or July in a decision, that elected officials at the highest offices are speaking out. It is very hard, as you well know, to get through the mainstream media the voice of reason and truth. And so one of the best things you can do is get future presidential candidates, current governors, the heads of political committees, all sorts of people that already have a great audience to be speaking out and saying what they think is important. But Vice President Pence is far and away I would say, on the national level, the best communicator on this issue. It is so in his heart and soul. It's the trajectory of his career. It's how he began when he ran for Congress. It's how he explained to his kids with his wife why he was getting involved in politics in the first place. There's really no one who knows more in such deep and wide ways the soul of America and how it's been scarred by abortion, but then also the way out. And his administration, of course, with President Trump, was the pathway for allowing 3 Supreme Court justices who will hear this case that will go to directly at the heart of Roe and the question of viability and whether there will be any limits on abortion pre-viability considered constitutional by this court.
Yeah, and what an important conversation to have, as you say, on this eve of the big Supreme Court oral arguments taking place tomorrow. Again, let's talk a little bit more about that and explain to folks who maybe don't really understand the Dobbs case what really is at the heart of this.
Sure. What this is a law that was passed in Mississippi, signed by the governor. It's a 15-week limit on abortion. There are many such laws all around the country. In fact, 100 limits on abortion have been passed just this year. Well, the court agreed to take up just this case. It is very clear that it is pre-viability, the 15-week limit. And the court said we will consider only one question, and the question is any pre-viability abortion limit constitutional? Now, if they say yes, and if we will hear the yes or the no in June or July of next year, if they say yes, that demolishes Roe versus Wade, because that's at the heart of what's left of the Roe versus Wade decision. If that happens, and if it's demolished or even just curtailed or undermined, that means that decision-making goes back to the states. It does not limit abortion in itself, this decision. It's just a transference of power from the Supreme Court, who made that decision for everyone, that there could be no limit, to giving it back to the states so that they can decide. Dobbs' oral arguments tomorrow are just all about the argument pro and con, 1 hour of conversation, debate on both sides, where each side is communicating to the Supreme Court justices its view. So the Attorney General of Mississippi and the Solicitor General will make their case that Roe v. Wade should be overturned, and the attorneys for the other side will give their argument that it should be maintained, that women depend upon it for their lives, and that it has been a beautiful blessing for the country.
Marjorie, we have heard time and time again that Roe is settled law. How hopeful are you that it will be overturned?
Clearly, it's not settled law. Clearly, in 1973, when the court took over legislators' ability to enact the will of the people into the law, state by state or on the federal level, when the court usurped that position, it incited debate. It caused more political rifts. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died recently on the Supreme Court, said that this caused more problems than it actually resolved. It is simply not settled. 100 bills have passed and been signed into law this year that are just a moot point. There are limits on abortion that this Supreme Court decision in Roe versus Wade won't allow to go into Congress, go into effect. And so we're really going from this theoretical debate where we debate, we never give up. We pray, we litigate, we pass laws, we pray, we serve women, we do all those things. It's gone from a theoretical legal limit now to something that really potentially will have teeth if Doe versus Bolton overturns Roe versus Wade, because that's when a 15-week limit would actually be enacted in the country now, perhaps across many, many, many states, but hopefully more than just a 15-week limit. We'll just have to see what the court says in June or July.
Well, Marjorie, thank you so much for taking the time. We know you are very busy today, so thanks for being with us, and thank you for all you do to protect life.
Same back to you and everybody who's watching.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. President Joe Biden's COVID-19 response team addresses the Omicron variant, including how contagious it may be and the effectiveness of the current vaccines. And as the nation struggles with higher costs, the government admits inflation is not going away anytime soon. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Today, President Joe Biden hit the road pushing his brand new infrastructure law. This as he and the rest of the world await more details on Omicron.
President Joe Biden traveled to Minnesota today to visit a technical college where he touted his recently enacted bipartisan infrastructure bill. Meantime, the COVID-19 response team updates the nation on Omicron.
The vaccine manufacturers are working on possible modifications to the vaccine and have been since late last week.
And right now it seems more questions than answers, including whether current vaccines can stop it.
That even if the mutations of various variants diminish that level of protection, you are still within the range of some degree of protection.
For President Biden, the new Omicron variant only adds another level of economic uncertainty to a nation already reeling from inflation, which Fed Chair Jerome Powell acknowledges will likely persist well into next year. Today he told Congress,
the recent rise in COVID-19 cases and the emergence of the Omicron variant pose downside risks to the employment and economic activity and increased uncertainty for inflation.
Earlier in the day, President Biden signed several bills aimed at helping U.S. military veterans and their families, including easing education costs for surviving spouses and children of military veterans, helping veterans find health care jobs, improving maternal health care for moms who are veterans, and examining racial disparities concerning veteran benefits.
We have many obligations, but we only have one truly sacred obligation, in my view. And that is prepare those we send into harm's way, care for their families when they're gone, and care for them and their families when they're home.
Also tonight, the White House is commenting on tomorrow's abortion hearing at the Supreme Court. Earlier, the press secretary is saying the president, quote, believes Mississippi's law blatantly violates a woman's constitutional right to safe and legal abortions, end quote. Meanwhile, Catholic bishops are demanding the president, who is Catholic, to not include abortion funding in his Build Back Better agenda. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the U.S. Senate fails to pass the National Defense Authorization Act.
The motion is not agreed to.
Last night, a key vote fell short of the 60 required for passage. Republicans want more time for amendments and debate to forge a bipartisan agreement. Separately, yesterday, the Pentagon announced no immediate major changes for global U.S. force positioning following a nearly year-long assessment. The Archdiocese of Paris is finalizing plans for the restoration of Notre Dame Cathedral. Officials will submit their proposals next week. Critics say the plans will make the cathedral into a, quote, theme park. The cathedral sustained severe damage back in 2019. Portugal's Catholic president has again taken a pro-life stand against a bill that advocates euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide rather than signing it into law. President de Sousa has returned it to Parliament, effectively stopping the bill for the second time this year. Greece is imposing a mandatory coronavirus vaccine for those who are 60 years of age or older.
Θα πρέπει έως τις 16 Ιανουαρίου.
Greece's prime minister has announced a January 16th deadline. Those who do not take the shot will face a monthly fine of $114. COVID-19 infection rates in Greece have returned to record levels this month. Similar vaccine mandates for healthcare workers have stirred protests in Athens. Coming up, the president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center looks ahead to tomorrow's pro-life court case. And get a preview of the Holy Father's trip to Cyprus. In his speech today, former Vice President Mike Pence called on the Supreme Court to restore the sanctity of human life to the center of American law and emphasize the importance of respecting life in the womb. And joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Joseph Meany, president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Dr. Meany, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We appreciate, well, you know, Vice President Pence said abortions have started to overlap with eugenics. And one of the things he mentioned is that more than 2/3 of aborted babies right now had Down syndrome. I want to get your thoughts on that and what we are seeing.
Yeah, it's very true. Around the world, prenatal diagnosis turns into search and destroy. Rather than treating problems that children might have or accepting the fact that some children might have some disabilities or problems, instead they're aborted. And that's true in over 90% of cases for Down syndrome.
What do you think can be done to reverse that heartbreaking trend?
You know, I think there need to be more stories. The people who have Down syndrome children talk about the joy in their families and how beautiful it is to have this special child with them and all the different things that come out. I have a cousin who has a Down syndrome child, and that little boy is just an amazing person. So I think just realizing that, because people think they're not up to the challenge, but they actually are. You know, there are blessings hidden in the suffering.
Yeah, definitely there are. I want to turn now to what's happening tomorrow at the Supreme Court, the oral arguments that we're going to hear tomorrow in this Dobbs case. You know, a lot of people are saying this could possibly overturn Roe versus Wade, and that was a long time ago, almost 50 years ago. A lot has happened since then, especially when it comes to advancements in medical technology and what we know about the unborn baby in the womb. Can you kind of go through all that, you know, what we have seen from them until now?
Yeah, in 1973, the claim was made that we don't know when human life begins. The claim, which was false even then, but you know, we didn't have ultrasound technology. We couldn't see the child in the womb. We didn't have those incredible images of the moment of conception when that light just emanates, you know, the new creation, which is so incredible. We didn't have surgery on unborn children, which we have today, you know, to help them in the womb. I personally, when I was in my doctoral program, watched a blood transfusion in utero, a little child receiving a blood transfusion. It was so beautiful. But so we really see the preborn child as a patient now. And unfortunately, in the same hospital, you could have, you know, the preborn child as a patient and the preborn child as a victim of an abortion. But I think we've come a long, long way. You know, people realize the humanity and then the personhood of the little child, and so many people have suffered through abortion and seen how terrible and how it's not a solution. And so I think we're just ready as a nation, right, to turn that chapter and say we're going to become pro-life. We're going to defend life from the first moment of conception, and we're going to be, you know, that country that we're supposed to be. Right, the land of liberty and the land of protection of the weak and the vulnerable.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to touch on was this afternoon, a group of senators talked about the case tomorrow. And one of the things they mentioned was how our country kind of stacks up with other countries when it comes to pro-abortion laws. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is we're kind of up there, and not in a good way, with China and North Korea as to when we permit abortions up to past 20 weeks. Can you talk about how the United States stacks up as a whole against other countries?
Sure. I mean, there's a significant part of the world that does not allow abortion, right? Large swaths of Latin America and Africa and Asia, little spots in Europe, et cetera. But there, even in the countries that allow abortion, generally speaking, it's quite limited. You know, 12 weeks limits and things like that. In the United States, one can have an abortion almost until birth. You know, and there's some abortionists who specialize in these late-term abortions. And even though the partial birth abortion ban was put in, that's just a ban on the procedure. They can still kill these children right up until birth using a different procedure. So it's very sad to see that there's, the United States really stacks up internationally as one of the most permissive countries, allowing abortions in many, many circumstances that are not allowed elsewhere.
Yeah, running out of time, but quickly, I want to get your thoughts on tomorrow in the case.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a beautiful day. I've been dreaming about it forever. You know, to actually see the Supreme Court listening to a case that could reverse Roe versus Wade is amazing. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think, you know, we have to keep our prayers going, that the justices will remain true to their principles and to the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah, absolutely we do. Keep on praying. And Dr. Meany, thank you so much for coming on and offering us your expertise. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, Vatican meeting. Pope Francis encourages young people to create a positive culture. And December prayer intention. The Holy Father shares his petition for next month. As I mentioned earlier, today is the feast of St. Andrew, the patron saint of Greece and Russia. And Pope Francis sent a message to the Orthodox faithful. In his statement, the Holy Father said in part, quote, "It is my hope that Catholics and Orthodox may increasingly work together in those areas in which it is not only possible, but indeed imperative that we do so." Pope Francis leaves the Vatican on Thursday for his 35th apostolic journey. The first stop will be Cyprus, where the Holy Father will stay for 2 days before leaving for Greece. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
I'm standing in front of what's known as the UN buffer zone in Cyprus, which divides the Turkish-controlled part of Cyprus in the north and the Republic of Cyprus in the south. This border runs right through the capital, Nicosia, where Pope Francis will be arriving on December the 2nd. Now, Cyprus has seen an enormous influx of immigrants over the past number of years, coming through Turkey, from Syria, across the Middle East, parts of Africa. In fact, Cyprus now has the highest number of asylum seekers per capita in the EU. And this has been difficult for such a small nation with a small population and caused some tension in the country. Now, when he is here, Pope Francis will go to the Church of the Holy Cross, very close to here, also in the buffer zone, and will meet some of those migrants, and they will pray together. We met some of the migrants this morning who were there queuing to get help from the local Caritas group, and they told us that they had come looking for work, documentation, and a chance at a new life. Another important meeting for Pope Francis will be his meeting with the Archbishop of the Orthodox Church of Cyprus, Chrysostomus II, which will be significant as the Orthodox Church is the major religion here. It's part of the identity of the Cypriot people. While in Cyprus, the Pope will also visit the Marianite Cathedral, where he will meet priests, religious, and many people involved in the ministry of the Church. He will meet the President at the Palace, and he will celebrate Mass in an open-air stadium here in the capital, Nicosia. In Cyprus, Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Francis encourages young people to create a culture of positive encounters with one another. At a recent meeting with Scholas Occurrentis at the Vatican, the Holy Father said when we lose the capacity for encounter, we become like fossils. The organization was founded by the Holy Father around 20 years ago when he was a priest in Argentina. Joining us now from Rome is Maria Paz Gerardo, International Coordinator for Scholas Citizenship. Maria, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today. For those who may not be familiar, can you tell us a little bit about your organization and the work it does?
Of course. Thank you, Tracy, for the invitation. Scholas Occurrentis, it's an educational foundation created by His Holiness Pope Francis that tries to gather youth from all over the world, ask them what are their concerns, what are the problems that truly affect them, and empower them to create the solutions that they need and they want to see for the communities, for the environment. So we do this by gathering youth from all over the world, youth that are diverse, from multiple religions, multiple socioeconomic backgrounds, multiple countries and cultures, and create a space for them to be able to express themselves.
And I understand that you were a part of that group that met last week with Pope Francis. Can you talk about that meeting and also some of the highlights for you?
Of course, it was a very moving week for us. We had two different groups gathering here in Rome. It was a total of more than 70 youngsters from more than 42 countries, from different places, of course. And the first group gathered here it was a group that continued working with scholars during the pandemic. So when schools were closed, we created a safe environment, a virtual school, a virtual class, in which these students, these youth could gather, could listen to each other, could share what they were living during the pandemic, and try and find together also some kind of relief, of some kind of company. So these youth that met during the whole year, last year, once a week, got the opportunity to finally see each other face to face, hug each other, fortunately. So it was a very, very moving experience. And then we had a second group, that it's a group of 50 young leaders from 35 different countries, who are attending the first group of the political school Fratelli Tutti.
Before I let you go, not a whole lot of time left, but can you talk to us about some of the other initiatives that your organization is working on?
Of course. So we have projects in different places of the world. One of the projects that we have at our heart is a project that we are developing in Haiti. You know that the situation that the country Haiti is living right now, it's a very chaotic situation. They recently had another earthquake. The political situation is very also worrying. So we are working there to create spaces for youth to be together. We created an educational kit during the pandemic as well, in which schools were closed. In that country, unfortunately, there was no opportunity for the students to meet virtually because the connection was very low and very difficult. So we created something different.
Oh, wonderful, Maria. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and talking to us about all this wonderful work that you and your organization is doing around the world. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And finally tonight, Pope Francis releases his prayer intention for the month of December.
Todo un modo de ser. Y hacen falta buenos catequistas.
The Holy Father asked the faithful to pray for catechists or those who teach the Catholic faith. Pope Francis says the teachers are summoned to announce the Word of God, that they might be its witnesses with courage, creativity, and in the power of the Holy Spirit with joy and much peace. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.